Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm providing some brief lectures and commentaries on topics from the courses I teach in literary and cultural studies. In another webcast, I've spoken about the different economic systems of the medieval period, of modernity, and the emerging conditions of postmodernity. In this webcast, I want to say some things about the different knowledge systems of those three eras.
The intellectual life of medieval Europe was grounded in the assumptions of Platonic philosophy. The classical Greek philosopher Plato advanced an idealist understanding of human knowledge and experience. That is, Plato thought that human understandings of physical reality were based on perceptions that were actually illusory. For Plato, reality existed not in physical form, but only in an ideal, absolute truth that could only be perceived imperfectly by human consciousness. Plato's philosophical idealism was consistent with the doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church, and in fact, Platonic philosophy had informed the development of early Christian theology. A notable example of the convergence of Platonic philosophy and Roman Catholic theology can be seen in the Catholic Church's reaction to the philosophical movement known as scholasticism. Medieval scholasticism is a system of rational inquiry developed by the Catholic theologian St. Thomas Aquinas. Like modern scientists, Aquinas advocated a system of rational inquiry and investigation. However, the ultimate goal of scholasticism was not to find out more about material, physical reality, but to develop logically consistent, rational proof of the existence and truth of God, which, it was assumed, was already known. Even though St. Thomas had no intention of challenging the revealed truth of the existence of God, his ideas were seen as dangerous by the Catholic Church, and he and his followers were suppressed. But the emphasis upon human reason, characteristic of the ancient Greeks and revived by St. Thomas and his followers, would be revived again during the Protestant Reformation and would become a hallmark of modernity.
During the 16th century, the Catholic Church's control over the intellectual lives of Europeans was shaken by the Protestant Reformation, and the Church's authority was indirectly undermined by the spread of print and the rise of literacy. The Platonic idealism and Catholic theism that had dominated the Middle Ages came under pressure from a revival of rationalism. One of the key figures associated with modern rationalism is the French philosopher René Descartes. Descartes was a devout Catholic who set about to devise a logically consistent and theologically sound response to the challenge of Protestantism. Descartes began by eliminating from his foundation of assumptions everything that he could not be absolutely sure was true. The one thing that he could be absolutely sure of, he concluded, was that he was thinking. And since he was thinking, he must exist, because if he did not exist, he could not be thinking. Hence Descartes' famous phrase, cogito ergo sum, Latin for I think, therefore I am. For Descartes, this was proof of God's existence, because any absolute truth, such as the fact that Descartes existed, was also proof that something beyond human consciousness existed. That something must be God.
But rationalist thought would eventually evolve into a system that would question God's existence through the logical extension of the scientific method. The scientific method, originated by the English thinker Sir Francis Bacon, holds that knowledge of the real world can be developed incrementally by scientists who observe and measure natural phenomena. Soon the scientific method would produce bodies of knowledge that would challenge the existing conceptions of reality and threaten the Christian system of belief.
One example of the conflict between science and religion in modernity can be seen in the Catholic Church's response to Galileo's adoption of the Copernican theory of the heliocentric universe. That is, the understanding that the Earth goes around the sun rather than the sun going around the Earth. When Galileo published this theory in the early 17th century, the Catholic Church threatened to excommunicate him, and eventually Galileo recanted his writing.
Another significant body of thought in modern philosophy is the development known as Enlightenment universalism. Enlightenment thinkers saw the philosophers and theologians of the Middle Ages as superstitious and ignorant, and they embraced rationalism and the scientific method as the positive expression of human excellence. In their emphasis on human potential, human excellence, and human achievement, Enlightenment thinkers might be said to exalt the human to a level on a par with God, if not above God. They conceived a universal essence of humanity as a kind of absolute truth. Modernity's embrace of the scientific method and rationalism eventually led to quantitative methods of knowing and statistical representations of reality.
A sense of the different consequences that result from these ways of knowing, as opposed to earlier idealist paradigms, can be illustrated by considering contemporary research in genetic engineering, which is opposed by many traditionalists because it would seem to suggest that humans can learn to create life itself, and the creation of life is seen as the prerogative of God.
The genetic code, in effect, reduces the biological essence of a human to a series of numbers. This trend toward what traditionalists would see as a reduction of essential humanity is extended even further in the postmodern era. Postmodernism sees human existence and human understanding not as something that is informed or determined by an ideal or absolute truth, such as God or human experience, and not as something that is essential or universal to all humans, but as something that is radically contingent upon social experience and psychological desire. In fact, postmodernism rejects the very concepts of absolute or essential reality. Instead, postmodernism sees human knowledge as based on situated reality. Human knowledge is the product of social experiences and interactions. For postmodernism, we are not so much born human as we become human in our dealings with other people and in the process of securing sustenance and shelter for the preservation of life. Hence, the kinds of interactions we have, the ways we live materially, and the ways we deal psychologically with these experiences determine what kind of people we will be. Truth, as it is conceptualized by postmodern thought, is radically contingent, not absolute. Truth may change over time, and what it means to be human may change according to changing social and material circumstances.
As always, if you have questions or comments as you're reading about and thinking about this topic, don't hesitate to send me an email.